Welcome back to part two of Terror at the Valley Zoo. Chapter 4. Dennis and Justin could hear yelling and activity that sounded muffled by the walls and metal door of the building they were in. At first, they were too scared to open the door, fearing the big cat may still be outside. "We can't stay here forever," Justin said. "Sure we can. Beats getting eaten by a large lion." "We don't even know if it's mean. Maybe he's like a big house cat," Justin added. That's okay. I'm not that brave. I didn't survive all these years by being foolish," says the guy who routinely drinks himself unconscious. "And how would you know?" Dennis asked smugly. "You told me, remember?" Justin reminded him of the conversations they've had at coffee and lunch breaks. Justin decided to take a chance and opened the door. He wanted to see if it was clear for them to make their way back to the gate and their truck where his cell phone was. Carefully opening the door, he pushed and listened. After a moment, he stepped out and gingerly made his way to the corner of the building, peering around to scan the area for the lion. He couldn't see it, so he stepped back to the door and urged Dennis to come with him. Reluctantly, Dennis found the courage and stepped out to follow him. Together they started making their way back toward the main entrance. "I don't see the cat anywhere," Justin said. "It's got to be around here someplace." The men continued to walk, looking left, looking right, praying the lion was not around. "I think it had blood on its face. Probably human," Justin said. "Don't talk. I don't want to know," Dennis admonished. As they walked past an outbuilding, they heard a faint groan. "Shh! Did you hear that?" Dennis asked. "Yeah, it came from over there. Come with me." Cautiously approaching the shed, they carefully peeked around the corner to see a young man slumped up against the wall, his clothing shredded and covered in blood. His wounds appeared to be mostly to his chest and left arm. Justin rushed to his side and checked to see if he was capable of moving. Can you hear me?" Justin asked the injured man. Barely audible, he answered, "Yes." "What's your name?" "Sam. Sam Reynolds," coughing up blood as he spoke. "He's lost a lot of blood. His chest is a mess," Justin told Dennis. "Do you think you can walk if we help you?" "Wait a minute. If that cat is around and it smells blood, this guy will lure it right to us," Dennis said, not wanting to be burdened with carrying Sam. "On the other hand, if that lion comes, we can feed this guy to it while we get away." "Shut the heck up. What's wrong with you? Can't you see this guy needs help?" "I'll feed you to the lion if you don't help me," Justin angrily replied. Together they helped Sam get to his feet, and the three of them shuffled along toward the entrance to the zoo. "Oh shit! Oh shit! What's that?" Justin said, pointing to what looked like a man's body lying in the open gate. As they got closer, they saw the man was wearing a uniform with a logo. Upon further examination, it was clear the man was dead, his head almost severed, throat and chest ripped open, and his right arm partially eaten. The logo read Midwest Power Corp. "Poor guy. Come on, that damn cat could be anywhere," Justin said as he urged them to keep moving. Sliding through the open gate, they walked out and looked around. The closest house to the zoo was less than half a mile away. If that lion is now wandering out in the neighborhood, he could kill children at the playground or some old man or woman working in their garden. It had to be stopped, Justin thought. Finally making it to their truck, Justin opened the door and grabbed his fully charged cell phone. They helped Sam get into the front seat and Dennis got behind the wheel. "Let's get this guy to the hospital. You call the cops and tell them there's a damn lion on the loose in the surrounding area by the zoo. Tell them it's already killed, so we probably It probably will kill again. Dennis slammed his foot down on the gas and spun the tires as he quickly headed west toward the Mountain View Community Hospital. Sam was gasping and slipping in and out of consciousness. Justin fumbled around under the seat, finding a first aid kit, and retrieved a handful of gauze and placed it on his chest wounds as best he could, applying pressure to try and slow or stop the bleeding. Is he going to make it? Dennis asked. How the hell do I know? I'm not a doctor. Justin snapped back. After a moment, he added, Hey, sorry, I'm just really stressed, you know? No worries. Hey, at least we got out of there okay. I'd hate to be outside in that neighborhood, though, working in your garden or something. Then look up and there's a 400-pound lion ready to eat you. Just keep driving, Justin replied. Chapter 5. Thanks. I thought I was a dead man, Landon said to Julie and Eric. What happened to the other guy? Julie asked. Yeah, where's Sheldon? Eric anxiously asked. Did he find a place to hide? Landon looked at Julie wide-eyed and just shook his head. There was a moment where nobody said a thing. Then Landon said, We better call 911. Tell them there's a man-eating lion on the loose. I'll call my wife. She's with animal control. I'm sure she can help. The emergency operator thought they were making a prank call at first, but when Landon identified themselves and got angry with the dispatcher, she contacted the police, fire rescue, and ambulance. Landon told her to call animal control, but she said she would leave that up to the police to analyze the situation. Landon said to himself, Screw this, and called his wife, Laura. Laura was only 25, but had worked with wolves and helped her father on his trap line growing up. She'd even had a few run-ins with bear, so she was known for being calm when faced with large, dangerous animals. I didn't see where that lion went. Did you? Landon asked. No, I didn't, Julie replied. Me neither, Eric said. I doubt it went back in. I'm sure it's out in the area around the zoo. Look, the gate is still open. We better just drive around this area and look for it. We'll be safe in the truck, but we can guide the police or animal control to it if we see it, Landon advised. Sure, I agree. Let's take a drive around over there, Julie said as she pointed in the direction of a wooded area that stretched behind several houses. So you work here? At the zoo, I mean? Landon asked Julie, noticing her uniform. Yes, I've worked here for about 8 months. What do you know about that lion? Landon asked, continuing his interrogation. Yeah, do you know anything about it that the cops can use to stop it? Eric cut in as he steered the truck along the road next to the woods, while squinting to see any movement of the beast. Well, I know a little. I know his name is Magnus the Magnificent. He was a circus lion and toured the United States, but was abused by his owner. He's about 6, maybe 7 years old. His owner got charged with a bunch of crimes and his circus got shut down. His animals went to various zoos and animal conservation parks. We also have a couple of that guy's zebra. Gee, almost makes you feel sorry for it, but he still killed my coworker. Damn, Eric added. He didn't have time to mourn, though. They had to help the police find Magnus before he attacked again. In the distance, they heard police and ambulance sirens heading in their direction. Just then, a white GMC Yukon raced toward them. It's my wife, Landon said excitedly. She'll have some drugs to tranquilize the lion. Tranquilize? Just shoot the damn thing, Eric urged. I hear it takes too long for that stuff to take effect. It sometimes does. Depends on the situation, the size of the animal, Julie explained. Stop the truck, Landon instructed Eric as he waved to his wife, who had pulled up close to where they were driving. Both vehicles parked side by side, and the occupants talked to each other through their rolled-down windows. Hi, hon. Am I ever glad to see you? You almost became a widow today, Landon said with a grin. Now, don't be saying that. We've only been married a year. So we have a lion on the loose, eh? Well, I have some titibane with his name on it, Laura said. Do you know where he went? No, but we think that stretch of wooded area is a likely place. He's probably scared and stressed, Julie offered. I'll bet he is, Eric said sarcastically. The police, ambulance, and fire rescue all arrived at the same time and stopped at the zoo's main gate. Media vehicles arrived and reporters started to assume positions with camera crews and approached the police with questions as to what happened. Eric drove back to the zoo to offer their assistance. The public came out of their homes, alerted by the sirens, and started arriving at the zoo, not realizing there was a dangerous animal on the loose. Police officers, heavily armed with Remington 870 shotguns, loaded with 3-inch slugs, gathered around their cruisers, listening to their commander's briefing. The entire area was alive with humans and barking police dogs. Then Jim Vaughn and his family pulled up to the main gate. What the hell is going on? Jim shouted loud enough to be heard by everyone. Landon ran over to him. A lion got loose from the zoo. It killed a man, a Midwest worker. It was horrible. 2 people got killed. My friend and partner, Sam, was attacked earlier. Julie tearfully corrected him, still believing Sam was dead. How could it happen? How could a lion escape? You guys have the electric fences, don't you? Jim went on. Yes, we do. We don't know how Magnus got out. Who? Jim asked, puzzled. Magnus. The lion's name is Magnus, Julie replied. Where the hell is Dennis? Oh, and where is Justin? Jim barked out questions in an angry tone. We don't know. We think they were in the zoo itself. They may have gotten attacked. We barely got out of there ourselves. Sheldon, the Midwest guy, didn't make it, Landon replied. Shit, Jim said angrily. More vehicles started showing up. Top zoo officials, more reporters. It was becoming a media frenzy. Landon and Julie talked to the police, and she told them all that had happened since she and Sam arrived in the early morning. Then Landon told the police everything he knew and experienced when he got there and met with Eric and Sheldon. As armed officers protected them, ambulance and fire crews, first responders went to retrieve Sheldon's body. Once he was securely loaded into the ambulance, he was taken away to a hospital where he would be looked at by a doctor and declared deceased. Chapter 6. The doctors rushed in to save Sam's life, and he was into emergency surgery within minutes of arriving at the hospital. As Dennis and Justin waited, Dennis tried calling Jim's cell, but it just rang several times, then went to voicemail. What do you want to do? Stay here and wait for news about Sam, or go back to the zoo and help out? There must be cops there by now, Dennis asked Justin. Yeah, maybe we should go back and see what's happening. After talking to the nurse at the ward where Sam would be staying after surgery and telling her they were going back to the zoo, Dennis and Justin went back to their truck and started making their way. As they got closer to the zoo, they could see all the commotion going on. Lots of vehicles and people, a news helicopter hovering overhead, police and other paramedics scattered all around. Into this mix they drove until they were stopped by a police barricade. I'm sorry, sir, but you can't proceed any farther, the officer told them. Officer, we were at the zoo earlier and were almost attacked by a killer lion, Justin informed the policeman. Step this way, sir. I need you to make a statement. Officer Frost here will talk to you. Dennis, Justin, came shouts from the crowd. Landon, I'm glad to see you, Justin called. You're glad? I thought that lion was about to shit you guys out. We all thought you got eaten. There's cops in there right now looking for your bodies, Landon informed them. I thought I was a goner for a second. When I saw that beast, it scared the hell out of me, Justin said. Me too, Dennis added. Where were you guys? We just came from the hospital. We found some zoo worker in there. He was all torn up, but alive, Dennis answered. Sam? Julie yelled out as she came up behind Landon. Yeah, that's what he said his name was. Sam, Dennis replied. I have to go see him. What hospital is he at? We took him to Mountain View, Justin answered. But he'll be in surgery for a while. You won't be able to see him. What happened here, guys? What happened to cause the lion to get out? Landon asked. How should we know? Dennis replied defensively. We were working and left last night after hitting that cable. Then this morning we... Whoa. Hit what cable? Landon asked, surprised by what he heard. The buried electrical cable, the one that runs alongside the fence at the zoo. We put up barricades and signs saying open excavation. I tried calling Jim, but his phone wasn't working or something, Dennis replied, sure that there was nothing wrong on his part. I'm just wondering if that cable had anything to do with the cages or electric fence, Landon said as he warily looked around to see if Jim was anywhere around. I don't know much about cables or electricity, but I remember during my orientation, when I first started working here, they showed me a post or something where a cable line came up through the ground and provided electricity to the electric fences for the dangerous animals exhibit. I wonder if that cable you're talking about, that was cut or hit or whatever, shut the power off to Magnus's enclosure. No one has been able to look at yet, Julie said as she thought back to when she started. Landon, we're heading out now, Laura said as she was suited up with the police and her partner with animal control. She carried a .30 caliber rifle with darts. The police had shotguns and were authorized to shoot to kill. Be careful, hun, Landon said as he went over to embrace her. Ma'am, please try and save Magnus. It's not his fault, Julie said to Laura. Laura just smiled, got into a police vehicle, and drove in the direction of the wooded area where Landon and the others were searching earlier. We better go find Jim, Landon said. He'll want to know about this cable being damaged. I hope, for your sake, you weren't responsible for the electric fence being shut off. We don't even know yet if it was. We'll get some police with guns to escort us into the enclosure area in case Magnus or other dangerous animals are loose, and see how this cat got out. Let's go. 2 police officers armed with shotguns escorted Dennis, Justin, and Landon to inspect the lion enclosure for any obvious signs of damage. Julie came along to offer her advice since she was more familiar with how the cages, pens, and enclosures were set up. As they got closer, they could see from a distance the fallen tree that crashed onto the electric fence. Look there, Julie said, pointing to the tree. That's not good. No, that could be your culprit, Landon replied. They walked over to the tree and inspected the fence. It was clear the tree did some damage, but the fence was still largely intact. Okay, yeah, the tree did some damage, but if the fence is electric, wouldn't that still prevent your lion from climbing out? Look, he would still have touched that line there, Landon said, pointing to a steel wire that ran across the top and was slightly tangled in the tree's branches. You'd think so, unless there was no juice in the line, one of the police officers chimed in. We need to inspect that underground cable you said you struck, Landon said to Dennis. They started walking back toward the entrance when Julie noticed several dead Shetland sheep scattered around in the compound. Ah, damn, Magnus killed them, Julie lamented. Landon put his arm around her for comfort. Come on, let's check on that cable. Chapter 7. Laura and several police officers slowly drove around the area where the woods were closest to the houses. If Magnus was afraid, he may want to find a place where he could lay low to escape the humans searching for him. He could be anywhere, Officer Langley said. Not really. He recently fed, so we know he's not hungry. He's probably laying low in tall grass. This area is over 30 acres of brush and grass. The problem is, there's a few hiking trails and probably homeless people camping in there. Easy targets for a pissed off lion, Laura replied. We're going to have to go in on foot, Langley said reluctantly. They didn't teach us that in rookie school. Laura laughed and added, haven't you ever hunted? It'll be just like tracking bear. Nope. The only hunting I do is at the pub, looking for cougars. Ouch, that was a bad. I know, Langley said, laughing as he brought his police cruiser to a stop at the edge of the tree line. They got out and checked their equipment and firearms. Two other police teams stopped next to them and they all discussed the plan. They made sure they were on the same radio frequency and would split into 3 teams. Laura and Officer Langley would stay together. He armed to kill the lion if required. She armed to tranquilize it. The other 2 teams consisted of Laura's fellow animal control officer, who was also armed with the same tranquilizer, teletamine, as Laura was, and his police escort armed with a shotgun. The last team comprised of 2 police officers carrying shotguns only. We don't know for sure that this lion, Magnus, is it Magnus? Yeah, is even in there, but we have to assume he could charge us at any time. So stay frosty and watch your 6, Langley instructed as he looked to Laura for confirmation of the lion's name. Unfortunately, we know it killed at least 1 person already, but try and let me hit it with my dart. I calculate it to be about 400 pounds, so I've adjusted the cc's so the drug will take effect within 10 or 15 minutes. Hopefully closer to 10, Laura instructed the team. Same goes for him, she continued, nodding to her fellow animal control officer. They set off on foot. As other officers kept the public and media back, Jim, his wife, and son came over to the gate entrance to see who was there and saw Dennis and the others. Dennis, Jim yelled, where the hell have you been? At the hospital. We found a zoo worker pretty torn up and took him in. I called you several times, but you didn't answer. Jim looked at his cell and saw a couple of missed calls. His phone was accidentally left on mute, so he never heard it ring. Damn phone was on mute. I hate to be the bearer of more bad news, Jim, but apparently the boys damaged a buried cable. We don't know yet if that was the cause of the electric fences being down, Landon said. Are you kidding me? Jim said, clearly annoyed, as he looked at Dennis and Justin. When did this happen, and why didn't you tell me about this before? It happened late yesterday, but we didn't want to bother you. We figured if we put up some signage, then came back this morning, we could fix it ourselves. We didn't know the extent of the damage. That's why you made me foreman, to look after these things, Dennis explained. Yeah, well, we'll see if you're still foreman when this is over, Jim shot back. Eric, I'm sorry about your coworker. If my company is found in any way to blame, I'll do whatever I can to make things better for his family. Did he have a wife? Yes, he had a wife and a young son. Damn, Jim said. My bosses and the safety manager are on their way to investigate what happened and to see the damage to the cable. They want to see if it was the cause of the power outage to the electric fence around the lion, Eric said as he stood with the others around the lion enclosure. Laura and her police escort, Langley, carefully walked through the wooded area, scanning from side to side, looking for any sign of Magnus, tracks, or other less obvious sign that might alert them to his presence. As they moved along, they came across a homeless man's campsite. He was an old man of about 60 who stood with wide eyes when he saw them and their guns. Excuse me, have you seen or heard anything unusual around here in the past couple of hours? Officer Langley asked as he peered around at what the old man had with him in case he had anything illegal. No, sir, I ain't seen nothing, the old man replied nervously. What's the big guns for? There are reports of wild animals roaming through here. You will have to move into the downtown core for a day or two, just in case the reports are true. If you have nowhere to go, we can have you taken to a temporary shelter, Langley said, not wanting to leave the old man there, exposed to the lion. Okay, I can go. I got places to go, the old man continued. I don't want no trouble with the law. Okay, I'll be back in an hour to make sure you're gone, Langley said, not really intending to come back. They had to find Magnus. Suddenly they all heard hysterical yelling and shouting from the far edge of the woods. They turned to run toward the location of the commotion, with Langley getting on his radio to inquire what was happening. Running to the edge of the forested area, they looked to the west and saw people running away from a cluster of homes along a ridge leading down to the river. What's going on? Langley yelled at the other officers, who also heard the commotion and ran to the edge of the woods. That lion was spotted down along the river just out back of some guy's garage. The guy said he thought it was a really big dog with one of those lion mane wigs you can buy at the store until it opened its mouth and kind of grunted at him. He said he almost had a heart attack, one of Langley's fellow officers said. Let's get down there. Hopefully we can get a clear shot. Laura swung her rifle over her shoulder and followed Langley and the other officers. Now was her chance to try and save Magnus's life. If she didn't succeed in putting the big guy to sleep, then the officers would have no choice but to kill him. Chapter 8. As Landon looked down into the excavation where the cable was, he could immediately see the large gash that exposed damaged copper wires. Wow, that's not good. That's definitely a big cut, Landon said. Yeah, that doesn't look very good. Oh, here comes my boss, Julie said as she nodded toward zoo officials, who arrived to talk to the police and to start their own investigation. They came over to where Julie and the rest were standing. Julie, how are you holding up? I just came from the hospital. Sam's out of surgery and doing pretty good, considering he just went 12 rounds with a lion, her boss Leo said as he put his hand on her shoulder to comfort her. I'm okay. I'm sure glad to hear he's going to make it. I thought he was a dead man for sure. Leo, this is Landon and Dennis, and he's Justin. They're the guys who were doing the work on the cable or whatever here, Julie said as she introduced them to her boss. They all shook hands and engaged in some small talk. Dennis explained they were doing the excavating yesterday when Justin hit the cable. He said they didn't think anything of it, and because there was a storm coming, they packed up after setting up a barricade and signage and planned on fixing the cable this morning, but were confronted by that lion. Leo advised them to document everything that happened and complete individual witness statements, as occupational health and safety officers with the province will be arriving soon and will want to talk to them. Julie decided to go visit Sam at the hospital, while Landon waited for word from his wife on how the hunt for Magnus was doing. Dennis and Justin sat down and wrote out all that had happened to them this morning and the work activities in chronological order since they started on the project. Friday afternoon, Jim, his son, and Eric were meeting with Midwest Power Management to go over details of what happened to Sheldon and try to figure out the sequence of events leading up to his death. The police were tasked with maintaining crowd control and of tracking Magnus. Magnus was seen wandering along the alley between several houses by an old man working in his garden. His children were playing in the backyard and started yelling and screaming when they saw the big cat. Magnus turned and trotted down the alley toward a thicket of trees near the river, where he took shelter. Laura and Officer Langley were the first to reach the scene, and they slowly made their way to the thicket where witnesses said they saw the lion enter. I'll go to the left, you go to the right. Move slowly and be careful, Langley said to Laura. Agreeing, Laura inched her way through the thick brush, then abruptly stopped as she locked eyes with Magnus, who lay in some tall grass about 20 feet away, staring at her. Her heart began beating louder and her breathing was rapid as she raised her rifle to her shoulder. Magnus was laying with his rump exposed, offering a perfect target. His tail twitching, Laura was unsure. Should she shoot at such a close distance? She had no means of escape if he reacted to the pain of the dart and attacked her, and she had no other weapon to defend herself if he did. Laura decided to take the chance. She was sure the drug would take effect within minutes and they would be able to save his life. Her crew had a cage only a couple miles away, and it could be brought here within 20 minutes or less to secure the line for transport. As she took careful aim, Magnus continued his stare. What a magnificent creature, she thought, as she slowly squeezed the trigger. It was a sound like an air rifle as the drug dart found its mark. Magnus let out a grunt and jumped to his feet at the stinging pain in his hind quarters. Fortunately, he turned away from the pain and ran farther into the thicket. Laura exhaled and turned to run back to find her partner in case Magnus came back after her. She knew they would have to move fast to locate the line before too much time went by and the tranquilizer wore off. Langley was walking briskly toward her as he heard the commotion in the trees when Magnus darted deeper into the woods. Are you okay? Langley asked as he saw Laura running in his direction. Yes, but we have to move quick. Call to get the cage brought here, and we need more manpower to restrain him and load him up. Wow, my hat's off to you. I guess it's better to capture him than to kill him, eh? Absolutely, Laura replied as they rushed back to locate where Magnus finally collapsed. Within minutes, they located Magnus laying unharmed among some wild rose bushes. He was monitored and tagged, and blood samples were taken. It wasn't long before news of his capture reached the media, and news crews were soon on site to capture the events. Landon rushed to the scene and pulled his wife aside to congratulate her. I'm so proud of you. You're a lot braver than I would have been, faced with a killer lion only yards away from me, Landon praised his wife while embracing her. I guess all that trapping experience in the woods with my dad paid off, Laura said, smiling. Magnus, while unconscious in his cage, was soon loaded onto a truck and taken back to the zoo, where he could be looked after safely for any signs of trauma. Julie rushed to the scene and threw her arms around Laura, thanking her for her quick actions and bravery in preventing the police from killing Magnus. As the day wore on, the crowds of people started to thin out, the news crews packed up, and the police went on to other events and crimes. The area where Sheldon was killed was taped off by the police and Alberta government officials for further investigation. The afternoon turned into evening, and more rain clouds began to form. Landon and Laura were sitting at home, enjoying dinner, when they heard the crack of thunder. Looking out of his window, Landon said, "Looks like there's another storm coming." Standing next to him, looking at the rain starting to fall, Laura replied, "Sure looks like it." Epilogue. 6 months later, the lawyers are still battling to see who's at fault for Sheldon's death. The government laid charges, but it could take 2 years before the courts hear the case. Sam made a full recovery, but left Alberta and moved to Ontario to work in parks and recreation for the city of Toronto. Julie was promoted and leads tours for children and is head of the Zoos for Schools program, which oversees field trips and other events. Landon is now a project manager with Jim's company. Laura continues to work with animal control. She and Landon are happily expecting their first child. Dennis and Justin are still working in the field, at least for now. The Shetland sheep were replaced, and the entire zoo's infrastructure was inspected. A backup system was installed to maintain electricity to the electric fences for all the dangerous animals to prevent another such tragedy. Magnus continues to pace his enclosure, testing, always testing the wires, looking at you with those eyes. That golden mane of hair, thick and long, his taste of freedom and human blood, still fresh in his memory. The end of Terror at the Valley Zoo. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that reading, part 2, and let me know if you like this kind of thing. I can always continue. Thank you, and have a good day.